It's 2 a.m. You're lying in bed, completely still. And then, out of nowhere, your brain does something cruel. It replays a memory, something you said at a party 5 years ago, a joke that didn't land, a moment where your voice cracked, a text you sent that was never answered the way you hoped. Nobody's thinking about it. Nobody remembers it. Nobody cares, except you. And the worst part? You can't stop it. You lie there, cringing, pulling your blanket tighter, maybe even making a sound, a groan, a whisper, as if you could physically shake the memory out of your skull. Your heart rate climbs. Your jaw tightens. A wave of something hot and uncomfortable washes through your chest. Over a memory, a moment that lasted maybe 3 seconds, 5 years ago. A moment that, by every rational measure, should mean absolutely nothing anymore. And yet, here you are, wide awake, living it again. But here's what nobody tells you about that moment. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It isn't glitching. It isn't punishing you out of cruelty or boredom. It's following orders. Precise, ancient, deeply intentional orders. And the thing giving those orders isn't the part of you that you think of as you. It's something older. Something that doesn't speak in words. Something that has been running underneath your thoughts your entire life. And it has a reason for everything it does. Even this. Especially this. There's a concept in neuroscience called the default mode network. Scientists discovered it by accident. In the early 2000s, researchers were scanning human brains during various tasks, watching which regions lit up under different kinds of mental effort. Standard procedure, expected results. But then they noticed something that had no business being there. When the participants stopped doing tasks, when they were told to simply rest, to sit quietly, to do nothing, a completely different network of brain regions suddenly became more active. Not less. More. The brain wasn't powering down when given nothing to do. It was waking up, shifting gears into something else entirely. Something the researchers hadn't been looking for, something they didn't have a name for yet. They called it the default mode network, and what it does is deeply, quietly unsettling. This is the part of your brain that takes over the moment you stop paying attention to the outside world, the moment your focus softens, the moment your eyes close and the room goes dark, and the noise of the day finally fades. It's the machine that runs when you think you've turned off, and one of its primary functions, one of the things it does obsessively, relentlessly, almost hungrily in those quiet hours, is replay the past. Not the proud moments, not the victories, not the afternoons that made you feel warm and capable and loved. The other ones. The ones that made you want to disappear. The cringe moments, the failures, the things you said wrong, and the things you should have said and didn't. And scientists for years had no idea why a system embedded in the human brain would be designed to do something that seems, on the surface, so pointlessly painful. But here's something even stranger. Here's something most people never stop to consider. You don't actually remember the past. You reconstruct it. Every single time you recall a memory, any memory, not just the painful ones, your brain doesn't retrieve it the way a computer pulls a file from storage. It rebuilds it from scratch, piece by piece, using whatever emotional raw material you happen to be carrying at that exact moment, whatever anxiety is alive in you tonight, whatever fear is quietly humming beneath the surface of your thoughts, whatever wound from the week is still fresh. The memory gets rebuilt through all of that, filtered through it, colored by it. This was proven repeatedly across decades of memory research. Memory is not storage. Memory is performance. Your brain is not a hard drive. It is a screenwriter. And every night, alone in the dark, it takes the same scenes and rewrites them, adding new layers of shame, new weight, new interpretations, new meanings that weren't even present when the original moment actually happened. Which means the embarrassment you feel at 2 a.m. about something from 5 years ago isn't actually the feeling you had 5 years ago. It's a brand new emotion, freshly manufactured, generated tonight by a brain that chose, deliberately and systematically, to produce it right now. And that raises a question that should genuinely disturb you. Why? Why would your own mind do this? Why would millions of years of evolution produce a system that waits until you're lying still in the dark and then floods you with your worst moments? What possible survival advantage could there be in making you feel humiliated at 2 a.m. over a joke that bombed at a house party in 2019? This is where it gets strange. This is where everything you thought you understood about memory starts to come apart. Psychologists have a specific term for what happens in those nighttime moments. They call it involuntary autobiographical memory. But the clinical language sanitizes something that is, at its core, almost poetic in its brutality. What's actually happening is your brain has flagged certain memories as unresolved. Not embarrassing, not painful, unresolved, and that distinction matters enormously, more than almost anything else in understanding how your mind actually operates beneath the level of conscious thought. Your brain is not replaying those moments because it wants you to suffer. It's replaying them because it genuinely believes, on some deep, pre-verbal, subconscious level, that if it runs the simulation enough times, it will eventually find the answer. The better response. The perfect comeback. The version of events where you don't walk away feeling like the ground should have opened and consumed you. It's trying to solve something that cannot be solved. It's trying to fix something that has already happened. And it cannot stop, not until the loop closes. This phenomenon has a name. It's called the Zeigarnik effect, first observed by a Soviet psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik in the 1920s, in a setting that seems almost laughably ordinary given what it revealed about the human mind. She was sitting in a cafe in Vienna watching the waiters work, and she noticed something peculiar. The waiters could recall with perfect detail every item from every table that hadn't yet paid. Every modification, every request, every drink still outstanding. But the moment a table settled their bill, the moment the transaction was complete, the memory evaporated almost instantly. Gone, as if it had never existed. She took this observation into the laboratory and confirmed what it implied. The human brain grips unfinished things with a force far greater than anything it considers resolved. Incomplete experiences don't just linger, they demand attention. They loop. They resurface. They refuse to be filed away until something in the mind decides the matter is settled. And your most embarrassing memories? Your brain has never decided they're settled. It's still sitting at that cafe table, still holding the bill, still waiting for a closure that structurally, logically, emotionally can never come because you cannot go back. You cannot re-enter that moment and say the right thing. You cannot unsend the message or unsay the words or uncrack your voice in front of all those people. The loop is open, and open loops to the human brain are unbearable, so it keeps returning, night after night, year after year, running the simulation one more time, searching for the exit that doesn't exist. But the Zeigarnik effect alone doesn't explain the intensity. It doesn't account for the physical sensation, the way these memories don't just appear in your mind but land in your body. Heart accelerating, skin heating, stomach tightening, breath going shallow. As if the moment is not a memory at all, but a present tense emergency. To understand that, to understand why the body responds to a 5-year-old social stumble with the same urgency it would give to a car swerving into your lane, you have to understand what embarrassment actually is at its biological root, not what it feels like, what it fundamentally evolutionarily is. And this answer is the one that changes everything. Embarrassment is not an emotion about the past, it is a social signal, a real-time broadcast. It evolved not to help you process what happened, but to communicate something to the people around you in the immediate aftermath of a social violation. When you feel embarrassed, your brain is not replaying events. It is modeling minds. It is running a live simulation of how other people perceive you, constructing a mental image of yourself as seen through foreign eyes, measuring the distance between how you appeared and how you needed to appear to remain in good social standing. And the physical symptoms, the flushing, the heat, the racing pulse, those aren't side effects. They're the signal itself. They're the display. The visible broadcast of, I know I violated a norm. I know it was wrong. I am not a threat to the group. Embarrassment in its original evolutionary function was a peace offering, a way of saying to the people watching, don't cast me out. I see what I did. I'm already punishing myself. And here is the part that will genuinely unsettle you. At 2 a.m., alone in your room with no witnesses and no audience and no one watching, your brain is still performing this signal, still broadcasting, still modeling the minds of people who are almost certainly asleep, who have almost certainly forgotten the incident entirely, who have almost certainly moved through dozens of other social interactions since then that have completely overwritten whatever impression you left. Your brain does not know this. Your brain cannot verify the social environment from inside a dark bedroom at 2 a.m. So it defaults to the assumption that the threat is still live, that the audience is still watching, that the verdict is still pending, and it keeps broadcasting into an empty room, keeps performing for a crowd that went home years ago. This tells you something profound about what kind of creature you actually are. Humans are not merely social in the way we casually describe other animals as social. We are not social the way wolves are social or the way elephants are social. Human beings are socially constituted at a level so deep that it restructures the entire architecture of the brain. For the overwhelming majority of human evolutionary history, hundreds of thousands of years, your survival did not depend on your individual strength or your individual intelligence or your individual resourcefulness. It depended entirely on your membership in the group, your ability to remain accepted, to stay inside the circle of belonging. Being exiled from your tribe was not a social inconvenience, it was a biological death sentence. No shelter from the predators, no warmth in winter, no one to help when you were injured or sick. Exile was extinction, and the brain that evolved under those conditions built its anxiety systems accordingly. It treats social rejection the way it treats physical danger, because for most of human history, there was no meaningful difference between the two. So when you lie awake at 2 a.m., cringing over an embarrassing moment, unable to let it go, unable to talk yourself out of the feeling, even though you know, intellectually, rationally, completely, that it doesn't matter anymore, you are not being weak. You are not being neurotic. You are not being irrational. You are running a survival program so ancient it predates language, predates civilization, predates almost everything we recognize as modern human life. Your nervous system genuinely cannot fully distinguish between social embarrassment and physical threat. The alarm going off in your chest is the same alarm that kept your ancestors alive on the savannah. It is misfiring in a context it was never designed for, but it is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is simply that the world changed faster than the brain could follow. But then the research found something that nobody expected, something that reframes this entire experience in a way that is simultaneously comforting and deeply philosophically haunting. When neuroscientists looked carefully at who experienced these nocturnal memory replays most intensely, who lay awake longest, who felt the physical heat of old shame most powerfully, who ran the mental simulation most obsessively and with the most emotional force, the profile that emerged was not what anyone predicted. It was not the most anxious people, not the most damaged people, not the people with the most fragile sense of self. It was, consistently and measurably across multiple studies, the people with the highest levels of empathy, the most relationally attuned, the most emotionally intelligent, the ones who, in every other area of their lives, were described by the people around them as unusually thoughtful, unusually perceptive, unusually present. Sit with that for a moment. The people most tortured by their own embarrassing memories are often the most emotionally intelligent people in any room. And this makes a devastating kind of sense once you understand what embarrassment actually requires of the brain. To feel genuine embarrassment, not mild social awkwardness, but the kind of deep, searing 2 a.m. cringe that follows you for years, you have to be able to do something cognitively extraordinary. You have to be able to see yourself through someone else's eyes. You have to construct an internal model of another mind and then view your own behavior through that model. You have to hold a perspective that is not yours and apply it to yourself in real time. This is called theory of mind, and it is one of the most sophisticated cognitive abilities that exists in the human brain. The capacity to experience deep embarrassment and the capacity to deeply understand other people are not separate abilities. They are the same ability. The gift and the torture are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. The person lying awake in anguish over what they said is almost always the same person who notices when someone else is quietly hurting in a crowded room. And there's still one more layer, one more piece that the research uncovered that most people never hear about because it requires sitting with an idea that is uncomfortable in a different way. When scientists mapped exactly which brain regions activated during these nighttime memory replays, they expected to see the memory centers. They expected to see the emotional processing regions. They saw those. But they also saw something else activating simultaneously, something that had no obvious reason to be involved. The regions of the brain associated with future simulation, the areas responsible for imagining scenarios that haven't happened yet, for modeling possible futures, for anticipating, planning, and preparing for what might come. Which means that when your brain replays your most painful past moments in the dark, it is not actually looking backwards at all. It is using the past as data, as training material, as raw intelligence. It is asking a question. If this happened before, under these conditions, with this version of you, what needs to be different so it never happens again? It isn't ruminating, it's preparing. It isn't punishing you for what you did. It's running combat simulations to protect you from what might come. Your brain is a war room that never sleeps. And those embarrassing memories are not files to be archived, they are case studies. Active intelligence. The uncomfortable, restless, relentless work of a system that has decided your social survival is worth losing sleep over indefinitely. Every cringe is a rehearsal. Every replay is a drill. Every moment of 2 a.m. anguish is, at its deepest functional level, your brain refusing to accept that the current version of you is the final version. It believes you can do better. It believes you will be in situations like that again, and it is determined, with a ferocity that overrides your need for rest, your desire for peace, your desperate wish to just let it go, that when that moment comes, you will be ready. The brain, in its brutal and ancient and deeply imperfect way, is trying to make you stronger. Not gently, not kindly. Not with any concern whatsoever for your comfort or your sleep schedule or your emotional well-being in the short term, but with everything it has. With the full weight of millions of years of evolutionary pressure behind every single replay, behind every single cringe, behind every single moment of heat rising in your chest at 2 a.m. over something that happened so long ago you can barely remember what year it was. And now that you can see the full picture, now that you understand what's actually happening in those dark, quiet, agonizing moments, something else comes into focus. Something universal and quietly devastating. Every person who has ever lived has done this. Every human being who has ever lain awake in the dark has experienced this exact process. The most powerful rulers in history, the greatest artists who ever created, the philosophers and scientists and writers whose ideas outlasted their civilizations. All of them, without exception, lay in their beds in the dark and cringed over something they said. Something they did. Something that felt, in the silence of 2 a.m., unforgivable and permanent and impossible to move past. Julius Caesar, Marie Curie, Einstein. Every name that history has decided matters. Every mind that shaped the world. All of them ran the same simulation. All of them felt the same heat. All of them lay awake in the same unbearable loop, searching for the exit that doesn't exist. You are not broken. You are not uniquely damaged or unusually fragile or failing at something that other people manage effortlessly. You are participating in one of the oldest and most universal experiences in the entire history of human consciousness. A brain trying to protect you in the only way it knows how, loving you in its savage and imperfect and sleep-destroying way, enough to refuse to let you become complacent, enough to hold the standard, enough to keep the file open long after any reasonable case for closure has passed. But there is one final thing to understand. One last layer that sits beneath the neuroscience, beneath the evolutionary biology, beneath every framework and model and clinical term that science has built to make sense of what you experience in those dark hours. And it is this: the memories that haunt you most are not random. Your brain did not arrive at them arbitrarily. Out of the thousands upon thousands of moments that make up a human life, the infinite cascade of seconds and minutes and conversations and glances and words chosen and words swallowed, your brain selected these specific ones, returned to these ones, built its midnight simulations around these ones. And it did so for a reason that has nothing to do with how bad they were and everything to do with what they touched. The embarrassing memory about what you said to that person. It lives in you because connection matters to you more than you have ever been able to fully articulate. The memory of the moment you looked incompetent in front of people whose opinion mattered, it's there because your sense of capability is tied to your sense of self at a depth that no amount of rational reassurance can reach. The memory of the time you reached for belonging and were turned away, it haunts you because belonging is not a preference for you. It is oxygen. It is a fundamental condition of feeling real, feeling valid, feeling like your existence has weight and meaning and place in the world. Your embarrassing memories are not a record of your failures. They are a map of your values, a precise, involuntary, ruthlessly accurate portrait of everything you care about most deeply, everything you hold sacred, everything you cannot bear to betray. Every cringe is a compass. Every moment of 2 a.m. shame is an arrow pointing directly at the thing inside you that refuses to be diminished. The gap between who you were in that moment and who you know yourself to be. That gap is not evidence of weakness. That gap is evidence of integrity. The fact that it hurts means you have a standard. The fact that you cannot release it means you have a conscience that takes that standard seriously. The fact that you lie awake rebuilding those moments, searching for the better response, rehearsing the version of yourself that should have been there. That is not a character flaw. That is your character. That is the most honest, most unguarded, most unperformative version of who you actually are, visible only in the dark, only in the silence, only in the moments when no one else is watching and there is nothing left to perform. So tonight, when the memory surfaces, as it will, because this is what minds like yours do, when your brain cues up the file and begins the familiar replay and the heat starts rising in your chest, try to listen differently. Try to hear what is underneath the cringe. Your brain is not attacking you. It is telling you something true. It is saying, you are someone who cares about how you show up for other people. It is saying, you are someone who is not finished becoming who you are meant to be. It is saying, you are someone for whom these things, connection, integrity, belonging, competence, kindness, are not abstract values but living, breathing, load-bearing parts of your identity. And the people for whom these things are still alive, the people still running the simulation at 2 a.m., still searching for the better version, still refusing to declare peace with their worst moments. They are not the most damaged people in the world. They are, quietly and without any announcement, the most awake. The mind that tortures you in the dark is the same mind that makes you irreplaceable to the people who know you. The pain and the depth arrive together. The sleeplessness and the sensitivity are the same gift, folded inside the same burden. You cannot surgically remove the 2 a.m. cringe and leave the empathy intact. You cannot silence the replay without also quieting the part of you that notices, that feels, that stays present when everyone else has looked away. They are not separate. They have never been separate. They are one thing, one continuous, ancient, exhausting, beautiful thing. Maybe the goal was never to make the memories stop. Maybe the goal was always to finally understand what they were trying to say. Your brain never forgot that moment, because neither did the best version of you. And somewhere in the dark, in the silence, in the unbearable, familiar weight of a memory that will not release you, that version of you is still there. Still working, still reaching, still not finished. The most haunted minds are often the most awake, and the most awake have always been the ones who refuse to stop listening to the dark.